Did you know we're at the park right now that my husband and I fell in love
At this park?
at this park
As high schoolers?
as college
College.
people, college humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep. Down at that little beach down there. We worked at a summer camp together. How cliche. How cliche.
Hey, well, we're in person for this recording, which we aren't often. So this is fun. And we're in a new spot. We're at a park that's local to us outside of Madison. Yeah. And we just decided what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, welcome to Enneagram Adventure. So this is Tana and I's podcast where we talk about life and growth and development all through the lens of the Enneagram. Sometimes we talk more Enneagram. Sometimes we talk more development. Yeah, today we'll see how it goes. Anything you want to add?
I would like to add that I love your sunglasses and that the Enneagram is about why you do the things that you do, core motivation rather than what you do. So different than other personality assessments that you may have taken in the past, this goes levels deeper and gives you a bit more understanding as to where these behaviors and patterns came from. So disclaimer there, and if you are ever interested in an assessment that isn't a free one online that is more likely to give you an incorrect number and set of information, reach out to us. You can send us a text if you know us, but DM, comment on social, anything like that, and we can reach out and send you an assessment.
You can hit up our email if you want to. Yes, I forgot to mention that Tana and I are both IEQ9 certified coaches with that particular Enneagram tool. So that is the one that we recommend if we can deep dive into why someday. But if you're curious, yeah, hit us up. Okay, here we go.
So the importance of understanding one another, being open to understanding one another is a big kind of development tool that we use the Enneagram for each day. But even outside of that, I would just like set us up with life gets easier when we get genuinely curious about all aspects and opinions and beliefs and systems and everything else that there is to know and understand about another person. So I think just setting up with, if you're not feeling particularly open and understanding, this might be triggering for you.
Yes, there will be, if you tend to live inside a world that's pretty black and white or very this is right and this is wrong, yeah, this might be a little triggering for you to talk about or to hear about. But we want to hear from you. So if that happens, leave us a message or a comment or something. Let's talk about it more in our efforts to increase our understanding.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you picked this topic. I listened to a podcast. I shared it with you.
Mm-hmm.
But in that podcast, there are three guys. They each have their own podcast, but each of them teach inside the sort of same space that we're in, related to development. But one of the things that they talked about was this sort of the political divide in particular, and this idea of the refusal to understand someone with opposite political beliefs, right? So imagine I could never understand why someone would vote for XYZ politician. Or if you want to talk about it like in a social media kind of space, I could never understand why someone might follow this controversial figure or that controversial figure on social media. And as they were talking through that, and it really stuck with me, as they were like, well, then that's like the first job that you have, right? If you could never understand, then you need to fucking figure out how to understand. You need to get curious and ask more questions so that you can look at it from the perspective, because no one's mind is ever changed from well, you're an idiot because you believe XYZ.
Yeah, maybe subliminally this is why I chose this, because you shared this with me and I finished listening to it this week. But I think there is something that deepens your relationships and deepens the community around you when you decide that you're open and willing to understand and get curious.
Oh, I see what you're
And no, I think that there is a depth that happens in your relationships when you decide that you're open and willing to understand others and their perspectives. And if you think about it from the lens of the Enneagram, that's really the basis of it, right? You have these tendencies in your core number, in your core motivation. And the sooner that we decide to get curious about those things, our relationships are so much more beneficial. And I mean beneficial from the depth, but also the joy that you get out of those relationships. That even when it is hard and you're really struggling to understand the other person, through that struggle, even though you're trying and you get on the other side, your relationship gets deeper.
Right. Well, providing both people are interested in
Right.
that. If it's one-sided and we're not going to get into that, we are going to assume that this is in a mutual situation, but I just want to put that out there, right? If it's one-sided and you are always the one giving the benefit of the doubt, trying to understand, being curious, and the other side is meeting you with resistance, it will not deepen the relationship. Just it won't. But then that is for you to then say, okay, this is that person's work and I am not responsible for it. I'm only responsible for trying to understand what I can. And so we would not advocate for you to be involved in things that are not healthy or are abusive in any sort of way. So I just want to put that out there of the,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And understanding people does not always mean forgiveness, by the way.
Right.
Like, there could be confrontation that comes out of trying to understand one another, and that doesn't always look like, I'm talking to you nines, like, sorry, yep, my bad,
Yeah.
and avoiding the conflict. I don't want to confuse the two because they're not the same.
Right.
And conflict is important in getting into the depth and understanding of relationships. I'm curious about, so I'm a social subtype. I find it, generally speaking, unless I am stressed, I find it easier to try and understand different perspectives in the room. And that comes a little bit from the, I'm going to try and read the room. That's kind of my lead into that deeper understanding. I save the more in-depth curiosity for my closest relationships. There's a level of protection there. So I'm curious about, if we think about one-to-one subtypes, if you want to talk a little bit about that, and then how it might look for somebody in self-preservation.
Yeah. I think that, well, for me as a one-to-one subtype, I am most curious in a one-on-one setting or a one-on-one like conversation. It's easier to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
For me, sometimes the curiosity gets lost in a larger group because there's too much happening and I feel like to deepen the relationship, I need to invest, and therefore in a large setting, I kind of am navigating weirdly and can't fully invest or ask as many questions or, right? Like we've all been in those situations where it's like you like ask a question, but then somebody on the other side of the room has something to say. And so you don't really like get the full answer of the thing that you're curious about over here. Right. So that's for me in a one-to-one subtype where that part of it is easier for me one-on-one. I think though, to the point of it's not just the curiosity in those social situations, but it's also the curiosity, and I think we talked about this a little bit in our last episode too, like in the pride and the questioning, it's also that, right? It's the questioning of myself of like, why did when so-and-so said this thing, it make me feel this way? And having that sort of developing that understanding of myself also. Because it is true, the more you understand yourself, the easier it becomes to sit with other people and be curious. I feel like there's nuance to that, though, because some people will be like, this is understanding yourself in a non-judgmental, non-egoic way. If you are trying to understand yourself to manage yourself, to manipulate relationships, then that's not what I mean. That's yeah.
Right. Well, and that's a really, really hard, deep work, though, because it's a little bit out of body. If you think about it from a visual perspective, where there could be, you and I speaking, and then there's a version of you and I that are like above us.
Yeah.
Thinking about, oh, here's the meaning behind this, or making judgments. And if we're not recognizing and curious about why something someone does or says makes us feel a certain way, then you lose that point of view.
Yeah.
And that's when conflict gets really rigid. Difficult conversations get more difficult because you're so wrapped up in, this is tied to me as a person, this is tied to my identity, and I don't feel safe. Therefore, I exhibit these behaviors or withdraw completely.
Yeah.
Or the curiosity altogether just dies.
Yes. I think, today, you and I talked about this a little earlier, but today I had an interaction with someone where I had to push back on some things. And I left the conversation and thought, why did that trigger me in the way that it did? Like, I haven't quite unpacked with this particular person in this relationship, like what it is that is the thing. So there's like work for me to do there. There's also like like I have to find what is mine in the relationship versus what is theirs. Like, am I showing up the way I need to for me? Having trouble articulating this a little bit, but like what I'm trying to get to is there is a line, right? And this goes back to what we were saying before around understanding and how you have to have a two-way relationship for it to be productive. Because if you just take all of the ownership and accountability of it's me, how do I fix me, it's me, and there isn't something for the other person, then like it won't really work. So I have to find the line of what is me versus what was this other person and what are they responsible for. So I didn't get to your self-preservation thing, but on that note, like in self-preservation relationships, it could be a withdrawing. So it could be hard to get super curious because it might feel risky to ask questions and not know what the answer is going to be. And so that could be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I had a thought when you were explaining kind of this notion around a little bit of getting your own house in order.
Yeah.
Before, because it can't all be on you. You can't assume all of the responsibility in the relationship from a curiosity perspective and understanding. That was a lot of the really hard work that I did with Brandon initially. Like when I first started my sessions with him, where it felt like I had assumed so much of the responsibility in my relationships at that time that I didn't even know who I was anymore. Because I was taking on everybody else's perspectives.
Yeah.
So that is a really important call out, I think, because if you lose yourself in the process because it's just easier to give yourself over, that's not an authentic relationship. And ultimately, there will be a point where you drift apart, or there will be a point where it doesn't serve you anymore.
Yeah.
Which is a normal part of any relationship, right? But I think the importance around knowing what your house looks like and getting that kind of really good baseline in order is going to strengthen other relationships, which is again, another plug for why the Enneagram is so important.
Yeah, I think the Enneagram is like a really good gateway into this work. And at least for my particular path, I sort of went down this road of like, dabble in various assessments to try to like learn myself. And if you go way back in our archive of episodes, you'll hear me like, talk about how I was like an assessment junkie at one time. And I was like trying to find something that would like help me understand me. But I think for me, like, I dabbled in that. I did a little bit of sort of personal development work with a coach who coached only women, and she did a program called Breakthrough and Begin. And so I learned in that thing about like inner critic voice and like different like patterns. But then when it was during COVID that I really went deep in the Enneagram, and that then became this gateway towards a much deeper understanding and the much deeper work. And so I do think that it can be that for people if they want it to be that. It can also reinforce your ego if you choose to take it in that direction. And so that choice is really up to you and how curious you want to be and how much you want to understand yourself. Yeah, I think, everybody treats that a little different. And there is kind of a natural phase, and I definitely went through it with the Enneagram too, where this was so self-validating that it did reinforce like an identity thing that now I'm like trying to throw away. So,
yeah. Well, we've talked about it many times, but that's the excuse, right?
Yeah.
I'm a 2, therefore I don't have to worry about my own feelings, and I can lash out at people for not recognizing what I'm not telling them.
Yeah.
And that's just not helpful.
Yeah. So, and that goes back to that pride piece we talked about last week, for sure.
Well, pride is an interesting piece of this, because if you think about pride being a bit synonymous with ego, we talked about this last week as it relates to what each number could be potentially prideful of. That's the watch out, right? So when you're trying to navigate depth in relationships and getting curious about one another, that should be kind of that guiding principle of, this is my watch out.
Yeah.
And if you're going to use that as an excuse, then your relationships will not deepen.
No. I think to the understanding thing, though, if we do think about the lens of the Enneagram and understanding, one of the things that it did for me in that gateway was make me have a compassion for what caused people to be the way they are. And I think that's part of the understanding, too, that you want to get out. Like, the whole world would be better if we all just had a little bit of that compassion and willingness to understand what traumas, micro traumas, life circumstances have impacted people.
Yeah. And if you compare, this is all going to be different based off of the specific relationship that you're in. It could be a friendship. It could be a romantic relationship. It could be a relationship with a coworker. It could be your immediate family, mother, child, whatever that looks like. And the triggers are going to be different, probably in those spaces, depending on the conflict that arises. You've talked a lot about how like politics was a big point of contention in your household growing up. So the way that you, as I recall, translated that was like, I'm going to learn everything that there is to know so I can.
Right. So I can hold my own
Yes.
in the conversation.
Yes. This tool has helped me a ton in my marriage, being married to my stress number. So just inherently knowing more about myself, I'm lucky enough to know a little bit more about him, because when he's low side of 8, I know what to expect. And particularly when, he's showing up as his best self, then I know what that looks like and what it feels like. It gives me something to strive for. and gives me deeper understanding in our relationship so I don't get so resentful, because that was the tendency before I used this tool, that I would get very resentful and very anxious because that withdrawing tendency in an 8 would make me so anxious. And, I'm solving for abandonment amongst all the other things. So it's the curiosity of the trigger. It's the willingness and openness to understand that helps us grow fundamentally at the same time, because he's getting content through all of this and we can point back to it when we're in conversation.
Yeah. I think in my marriage, I maybe let Aaron off the hook a little bit sometimes. He would say that I don't, and when he listens to this, he might laugh. But like a little bit, I try to let him off the hook based on his 9-ness. I think we can't. There's danger in that. And it's mostly for my own.
But that's compassion
brain.
too.
Yeah.
That's compassion.
Yeah, it's mostly for my own, that I try to be like, well, he's a 9, so this is going to be hard for him, and I have to be understanding of that. At the same time, that doesn't mean that we don't hold people accountable when they need to be held accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I have a lot more empathy in moments for my husband too, that I'm still convinced that's why we see so many 2s and 8s together, is because there's so much compassion. But it's definitely not an excuse. And I don't give him the excuse very much.
I think the other thing that the Enneagram has done for me, and I don't know if you would agree with this in terms of finding understanding, but it has given me this, like, very rarely do people surprise me.
Oh, yeah. There are less moments where I am like, wow, I'm genuinely shocked. I have had some of those moments still, but those are like really intense kind of conversations or situations that I've been a part of where I was like, wow, that is surprising.
Yeah.
That came up. But no, I am generally speaking less surprised. I am, however, as much as I am less surprised, I am so increasingly concerned over people not wanting to understand.
Yeah.
All of that goes into this anxiety of, don't you want to know, though, where this comes from?
Well, I think it's on a personal level, if you want to understand like where it came from in you, that is genuinely hard, deep work. And until you're doing it, you may not completely understand how hard and it does get easier, don't you? I think it gets easier. Like, you go through sort of an initial phase where you're like, ugh, this is really uncomfortable, and maybe I just want to like leave that thing tucked in that dark corner because I just don't want to look at it. But the more that you look at it, all of a sudden you're like, oh, like it gets easier. So it's worth it. This is not dissimilar to physical activity, right? When you first start lifting weights, when you first start running, the first mile or the first whatever is so uncomfortable. You think, why would I ever want to do this? Or this is so heavy. Why do people do this? And then the more you do it, you're able to do more and more and have like greater capacity to go further or lift heavier, et cetera, et cetera. This deep work is not dissimilar to that. In terms of like, it feels really uncomfortable, but then the more you do it, the more you're like, oh, that's great. That felt great. I want to keep going. Then there's like, I don't want to say there's a plateau.
Yeah.
But there is like a time where like the really cathartic moments like fall off and you start to have like smaller, like, it's hard to explain. But where was I going with that? I think like my point is like not everybody will be able to get over that initial hump.
And it doesn't mean you solve for it in the long term either. There's peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
And manipulation and resentment were the two things that were the hardest for me to look at in the eyeball of like, here's how I manipulate and here's what I'm resentful for. And the resentment piece, Brandon was the one that really helped me with that. I didn't have a really deep understanding of that through my Enneagram initially. I do now because I keep score.
Yeah.
But Brandon really helped me start to try to understand that, some of the people in my life were doing the best with what they had at the time. And that kind of release of what you were holding on to is very cathartic. And it is those moments that are big release. But it takes real discipline to be able to recall that in moments more quickly. That's the other piece that's like not different than physical activity for me anyway.
Yeah. And I think the more you do it, it becomes easier. Actually, what happens is not that it becomes easier. You just sort of notice one day of like, oh, I didn't have a feeling about that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that reaction I used to have in this is gone now. Yeah. I think let's see, maybe we have time to do like a brief
Rundown of
numbers.
Yeah.
In terms of, I'm not sure exactly how we want to go with this in terms of like what they need to be curious about to have better understanding of themselves or others, or if we want to talk about like, I'm not sure. How do you want to
Well,
go
I
with
think
that?
there's multiple things that each number should be curious about, but I think the big ones are worth calling out.
Yeah.
It's the question you should be asking yourself.
Yeah.
And there are some basic ones that all numbers should be asking. You asked it today in this situation you were telling me about. It's like, I don't know if this is a mirroring situation or like, what do I see in that person that I see in myself that I don't like? Or, I mean, the other questions that you can be thinking of kind of subliminally as you get deeper into the work. But
well, and I think too in that situation, so there's that piece, right, which is me being curious about finding the ownership.
yeah,
But then there's also the other curious part and the understanding part is, well, why is she coming at it in this way?
mm-hmm.
And can I try to create like an understanding of what is driving her to come at it in this direction?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. This is a good one for us because about this time every summer, me and my husband get into a tit for tat, like who's had more R&R. Yeah. So this is timely for me.
Well, maybe if we run down from one, just really quick. So if I think about ones, the curiosity has to be around it. What if they're right? What if they are right? What if I am wrong? What if they are right? And then this has nothing to do with my value if they're right and I'm wrong.
What's the worst that could happen if I'm wrong?
And most of the time it's nothing, because most of the time it's not that serious.
No.
I mean, if you're not a doctor,
making one cut versus another cut,
it's not that deep. It's not that serious.
No.
Yeah.
It's not. 2, usually it is what is mine and what is theirs. And it's a little bit of what do I need?
Yeah.
In this moment, because 2s also in conflict can sometimes be a little bit 9-ish. We can be a little people pleasy, and it's holding your own identity in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah, not allowing the room to shift you, right? It's having being able to stand in your own conviction.
Yep.
Yep. That could also be a little true for 9, but we'll get to them.
Yep.
3, it's going to be curious about not winning. What if you didn't have to win this conversation? What if you didn't have to win this project? What if it was okay for either for someone else to win or for it just to be what it is?
What could you gain by losing?
Yeah. What could you gain by losing? Is there something you need to learn?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to see that in the moment, though, threes.
Yeah.
That's going to be that's going to be reflective later.
Yeah. You can try, though.
Yeah.
If refer. Fours?
Fours. What if you were normal?
Yeah, what if you were not your feeling?
And what if they do understand you? What if the question you ask yourself when you're in a relationship with someone and you're feeling misunderstood and you're like, they would never possibly understand me, would be like, well, what if they do understand you?
And a bit of it is like, wow, how grateful that someone is trying to understand me.
Yeah.
Even if you're not ready to admit that they can understand you.
Right.
Like, wow, that person is really going out of their way to try.
Yes. 5. It's okay that you don't have all of the answers.
Except for when I call you.
That's the question, right? Like, it's okay that you don't have all the answers. It's okay to say, I don't know. I'll look it up for you.
Yeah.
It's like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's also okay to admit when you need someone else. And that's a very hard thing for 5s that are driven to this like strong, independent thing. That could also be for 2s, right? It's okay to be like, I need you right now.
Mhm.
Like, I need something from you. I don't have it. I think you do. It's okay to ask.
Yep. 6.
Similar, you don't have to be prepared for everything.
Yeah.
It's okay to not have the thing that someone might need. It's okay to take care of yourself. I know 6 is in that compliant stance number, so this could be true for 2s and 1s as well. Like, it's okay to disappoint people. It's okay for people to be uncomfortable. I saw this thing today. Do you follow dad chats?
Yeah.
Do you follow his wife too?
No.
Oh, his wife, she has an account. It's called Mom Chats.
Okay.
But she had one today where she's like bouncing on her kid's pogo stick. And she's like, it is not my job to make accountability comfortable. It is not my job to make accountability comfortable. Right? So it's that same idea, right? It is not your job to like always care for everyone around you, although they appreciate it, or I hope they appreciate it. I know I do.
That's good for 2 too.
But like,
yeah,
you can do that. The other thing I would say for 6s is where can you be curious in your skepticism? Right?
Yeah.
Instead of being skeptical, can you assume positive intent? Instead of skepticism, could you be like, well, I wonder, something more positive?
Sometimes I read that as a wall being up.
Yeah.
So what would happen if you took the wall down?
Yes. Let someone in. Yeah. 7.
Ooh, 7. What would happen if you slowed the fuck down for a minute?
Yeah. What if you weren't on the go all of the time?
And what if you were sad? What if you experienced pain? How do you get more comfortable with pain? Can you dip your toe in spending a little bit more time being in pain or sad or uncomfortable?
Well, it's that again is the like, open that box in the corner and like look in there. Like, what's in there that you need to process that you've been covering with all of your exciting life plans or all of your reframes. There might be actually treasure underneath that thing. I listened to a thing. I can't remember if you and I have talked about this, but I listened to a thing where a guy was talking about how no one wants to go in the cave.
Yeah.
No one wants to go in the cave, and they are convinced there is a dragon in that cave, and they're scared to go in there because they don't want to wrestle with that dragon. But then finally they like work up the courage to go in there, and then they realize that it's not a dragon. It's a 4-year-old version of you who's crying in the corner and dirty and hungry.
Yeah.
And just needs to be loved.
Yep.
And so you might find when you open that box you're afraid to open that actually you just need to take care of yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
8. What if you showed any other emotion besides anger or intensity?
Yes.
What if you let your guard down? How can you try to let your guard down.
Well, and what if you were curious about what that anger is covering? So it's not even, if you're not ready to show the emotion, what if you were just like, I'm angry and I'm going to be curious about what's underneath the anger? Because we had Casey on a while back and Casey talked about that, right?
Mhm.
Like the anger is the cover for disappointment,
Right.
the cover for sadness, the cover for jealousy, the cover for whatever the
Yep.
thing is.
Yeah.
And so what if we got curious about what was underneath that and tried to understand that?
Mm-hmm.
And then with other people, when other people are not doing the thing you want them to do, this goes back similar to one. How about if you get curious about what's their perspective, what's making them push back?
Yeah.
Yep.
And what happens if you're not the one to hold people accountable?
Yeah. It's not your job.
It's not my job to make
Comfortable.
just know that's what it says all day, every day.
Yeah.
We're like,
No,
I can make accountability really uncomfortable.
Yes. How uncomfortable can I make this accountability?
Exactly. So
Oh.
flip that and reverse it, 8s.
Yes. Yes. Okay, 9s. What do you actually want? I think you should be more curious about that and understanding that. What do you actually want?
Yep.
And could you get more curious about staying in the conflict, both mentally and physically? You might really gain things if you stay in the conflict and don't put your wall up or don't withdraw,
Mhm.
right? There's nothing in the world that makes me more frustrated than when I'm trying to have a hard conversation with Aaron and he says nothing.
Mhm. Have an opinion.
Have an opinion. You're not protecting me by saying nothing. And sometimes if you say something, I might have a better understanding.
Mhm.
I'm not, now, to be fair, I'm not interested in excuses. So we have to like find the right line, right? Like, but like we can have a hard conversation.
Yes. Yes. I got a little protective over my 9 sister this morning. My mom says to me, she's like, your sister was a little grouchy today. I was like, what do you mean? She said she called me and asked where I was and what was going on. I was like, did she ask it just like that? She's like, yes. I'm like, hell
Good for
yeah.
her.
Amen, sister friend. Like,
Yeah. That's growth.
oh my God.
We gotta get either Aaron or your sister on the podcast. That needs to be
Yes.
on our goals for this year.
We should get both of them on at the same time.
Oh boy.
See how much indecisive conversation we can have. How much, well, I consider everybody's opinion.
Yeah. Well, I really understand where everyone's coming from. I'm gonna be like, but do you? Let's talk about your family dynamics. Are you sure you understand everyone? Kidding.
No, my sister's in the corner. La 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 la.
I'm just hungry. I just want to eat. Can everybody just get along?
I'm just good. I'm so good.
Yeah.
Well, this was fun.
Yeah. I like the little
Out in the wild.
park in the wild situation.
It's beautiful outside.
Yeah. So, all right. So we'll wrap on that. We'll have to try to do this again.
Yeah.
Well, we've got weather where we can.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try some different parks.
Yeah.
This particular park has a very cool pond, but there's like a lot of children down there. So
Yeah. You know what? Touching grass while recording this is
Yeah.
valuable.
yes, literally
touching
grass, grounded completely. If you're not watching this, we're sitting on the ground directly. Okay. Anyway, with that, if you are curious about Enneagram topics, please hit us up via email, DM, etc. We would love to chat about what you are interested in. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, we've got a list. I know we're bad at scheduling.
We are really bad.
Guests.
Well, that's mostly my fault because chaos.
But we will try to work on that and have a few more guests on.
That's it.
That's it, I think. Yep. Like, follow, subscribe. You can find us on all of the podcast platforms if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, or if you're on a podcast platform. We're on YouTube. Substack, TikTok, Instagram.
Yeah.
Can find us in all those places. I know we hinted at this the last episode. I think it was the last episode. We're starting to work on some other ideas for things. Maybe retreat, Who knows what else? We keep talking about merch. Maybe someday we'll actually get that off the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, so stay tuned for all of those things. If you listen this long, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And yeah, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.